anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboys fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, get us any.
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
You could say, I could say softer.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Debate Show. As always, me, Jack, and Doc are here on the show. Today, we have brought in a special guest host. You all noticed him from our Friday show and our Sunday Big Football show, and, of course, the host of TGI Sports. So welcome in Kieth Engle. Good morning, everyone.
Great to be here, guys. Like, very, very interesting. That I think I'm guessing Doc has debated this one topic about 12 times. It sounds like from the email yesterday. So
yes. This is an ongoing debate.
Mac was gracious enough to let Jack and I debate this, and the result was Jack lost. But rather than saying I lost, he decided that they wanted to try to have two fighters against me. So I feel like Rocky Balboa fighting Thunderlips and Clubber Lang at the same time in Rocky 3. So I gotta bob and weave and try to see if I can win the debate again.
Doc, there's a such thing as graciousness when you feel you've won, and you were sticking it to me with some emails, further trying to prove to me why Billy Martin wasn't a Hall of Fame.
No, those were very polite emails. I just sent some other ideas. That wasn't like, ha, I beat you.
So what Jack is saying is Doc has been jabbing him since the first debate, and this is Jack's counterpunch.
He was sticking it to me afterwards.
So this is Jack's counterpunch. And what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to time this. Jack is going to go first and present his argument again. Doc will rebut it. Kieth will try to pile on Doc. And Doc, let's see if Doc can get out of the chokehold. And I'll make a decision after that. So let's see. We'll go ahead, Jack. You got 5 to 8 minutes. I'll be a little liberal. Go ahead and state your argument.
Well, I don't know whether I'll need all that time. I might need more time. I don't know. Let's see where this takes us. But it's called body of work, guys. Body of work. A guy's whole career has to be encompassed with the Hall of Fame. You can only put someone in one category, technically. So when you put them in the Hall of Fame, you put them in the category in which they've made their greatest mark. And obviously, Billy Martin's made a greater mark as a manager than he did as a player. But when you look at this man's body of work, it's been tremendous. I mean, his stats don't stand out as a second baseman for the Yankees, except that he shined in the biggest moments in the World Series. He made arguably the most important catch in World Series history in the 1952 World Series. Arguably, I can't think of one other catch that was more important than Billy Martin's on the windblown pop-up that he took charge. It wasn't even his ball to go after. The whole infield froze. He went streaking across the diamond near the foul line and made a catch with the bases loaded. The Yankees up 4-2 against the Dodgers. And the Dodgers, the bases would have gotten filled. Was that the 7th game of the series, guys? Whatever. It was a pivotal game. And there's a good chance the Dodgers win the World Series if Billy Martin doesn't make that catch in 52. And 53, he's the World Series MVP. Knocks in the winning run, the walk-off, run to win that series. I mean, he shined in the biggest moments. People don't know this little teeny bit about trivia about Billy Martin as a player. Okay, after he left the Yankees, he was washed up. He couldn't do a thing. He was a starting second baseman for the Cleveland Indians even in 1959, who finished ahead of the Yankee dynasty that year. The Indians won second place, the Yankees third. People forget that. How the Yankees were the fared better with Billy. Now, Billy is a manager. Everywhere he went, teams improved, and often drastically. Do you know in 1988, the Elias Sports Bureau called Billy Martin the greatest manager in the history of the game? Tony La Russa said he had the most brilliant mind ever that he saw on a manager. The teams just won wherever he went. Now, did they fall apart at the end after he got dismissed? Did he leave them in a better place? Probably not, but it wasn't his job. He took over a mess to begin with in most cases and made that team better. I don't get it. I mean, we want to give other managers credit for something that came in new managers, for example, like Dick Williams leads the Oakland Athletics to 2 World Series in a row in 72, 73. He's not the manager in 74. They win with Alvin Dark. We want to give Alvin Dark credit for that, okay? If we're going to give a manager credit for something, we got to give them blame the guys who came after Billy Martin. The teams weren't good before he took over. They usually weren't good after. Now, Doc mentions a point. Why was he fired so much? Why did he move team to team? I'm going to counter. Why was he hired so much? What other managers have been in the demand that Billy Martin's been in when you look at it? And guys, it's called Hall of Fame. Before the show, I spoke to my wife, Audrey. She's not a baseball fan. She knows a little about boxing through her years with me, but doesn't really know hardly anything about baseball. And I said, have you ever heard of Billy Martin? And she said, of course. So I said, well, how did you hear of him? She said, well, he was a Yankee. I said, well, what else have you heard about him? She said, well, wasn't he controversial? I said, yeah. What else did you hear about him? And Doc loved this one. She said, wasn't he an alcoholic and a womanizer? And then she says, well, maybe I'm thinking of Mickey Mantle here. And they were buddies, Martin and Mantle. But if that's the criteria, Ty Cobb shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. Ty Cobb is the most hated guy in baseball history. Hated. But he was such a great player. Obviously, he's a slam dunk Hall of Famer. But you just look at what Billy Martin did. And even with the Yankees, you might say, well, in 74, they were good. They nearly won the division. 75, when he took over, they were trending in the right direction. But, okay, so they win the pennant in 76 under Martin, win the World Series in 77, on the 5-game winning streak in 78 when he gets fired. But we want to say, Martin has nothing to do with it. Give the credit to Bob Lemon. And the reason Martin got fired so much with the Yankees was George Steinbrenner. And Martin cultivated good relationships, too. He was buddies with Phil Rizzuto and Yogi Berra. I watched a documentary on Yogi Berra.
Jack, you're going way over the 8 minutes. I let you go over the 8 minutes.
Going over 8 minutes.
Yes, you're going over 8 minutes. I'm going to give Doc a chance to rebut what you said so far, which I don't know how long that will take. And then we'll let Kieth go. So, Doc, what's your rebuttal to him being best friends with Joe DiMaggio and somebody else?
Right.
I mean, that's all fame.
None of that has anything to do with whether anybody decides or should be put in the Hall of Fame. Wow, he was friends with Yogi Berra. Okay, I think everybody was friends with Yogi Berra. So I guess the Hall of Fame should be open to everybody. Phil Rizzuto was nice to him. Phil Rizzuto was nice to everybody. Phil Rizzuto didn't have a bad word to say about anybody. So that's not a reason.
They were buddies. No, they were buddies, Billy and Phil Rizzuto.
I don't think they hung out, okay?
Billy hired Phil as a spring training instructor, teaching the players how to bunt.
Jack. Everybody on the Yankees in that time was a spring training instructor. Every great Yankee went down and instructed in spring training. Your word was Billy Martin has a tremendous, this was your word, tremendous body of work. Tremendous body of work. This is his body of work after he leaves the Yankees. The Yankees trade him to the Kansas City A's. The next year, he's on the Detroit Tigers. The next year, he's on the Cleveland Indians. You say he was the starting second baseman. He played in a grand total of 73 games, which means he basically didn't play in 90 of them. That's some starting second baseman. The next year, he was so great that the Cleveland Indians got rid of him and they sent him to the Cincinnati Reds. The next year, he was on the Milwaukee Braves, I believe, and then the Minnesota Twins. This is a guy who was a giant distraction to his teams. Sure, teams bring players in. At one point, Joe Torre said, let's bring in Albert Bell, who was known as one of the worst teammates, one of the most controversial players, because Joe Torre believed, and I think he was wrong in this, that he could bring anybody into his clubhouse. And his clubhouse was so professional that they would all toe the line. That didn't turn out to be the case. But that was how Joe Torre felt. That's how people feel. Oh, let me work with him and I'll make him better. And every one of those teams did that. And every one of those teams seemed to regret it immediately because they got rid of him after a season. He was not a starting second baseman again on that one thing. He shined in baseball's biggest moments. So now we're going to just elect people to the Hall of Fame because they had one good World Series and made one great play in another. You called the catch he made the biggest catch in World Series history. I think Willie Mays, who made the most famous and greatest catch in World Series history, would debate that. I think Kirby Puckett, who made an over-the-fence leap, robbing a guy of a home run in Game 6, I think in 1991. I'm trying to get this information out of memory, and as you're talking, would argue that point. I think there's probably 5 billion. I think Brooks Robinson making great catches all over the place would argue. I think Greg Nettles making great catches all over the place in the Game 3. Oh, come on. I mean, so now one catch in one World Series is enough to get you to the Hall of Fame.
No, most important catch, because the bases were loaded and the Dodgers would have scored 3 runs and gone up 5-4.
The point about the teams improving, and you want to give the blame to the manager who came after him, that's just wrong. The teams improved. And then while Billy Martin was the manager, while he was there, they crumbled. It wasn't the next guy. He destroyed the team while he was there. He got them great, and then he destroyed them at the same time. That's why he was fired. You say the reason he was fired so much was George Steinbrenner's fault. George Steinbrenner punched a marshmallow salesman. George Steinbrenner fought Ed Whitson. George Steinbrenner did all of those things. He didn't. That was Billy Martin. He did it to himself. Even George Steinbrenner, who loved Billy Martin and who kept bringing him back, kept firing him because he realized, I can't have this guy. They hope to capture magic in a moment, win a World Series, and try to sustain that. But even Billy couldn't do that. You say so many teams hired him. They did until the A's, a team he absolutely destroyed. And after that, he was still young in the early 1980s. No other team would hire him. He got no other job. He's not a Hall of Famer. He was a great manager. He did great things in short periods, but the destruction he caused the team wipes out whatever bonuses they made, because at the same time that they did well, he then destroyed them. And he doesn't get credit for the 78 Yankees. Bob Lemon does, because Bob Lemon brought a sense of calm to that team that was in total chaos. And I don't care if they won 5 in a row. The 62 Mets probably won 5 in a row at some point. Last place teams sometimes win 5 in a row. The team was a mess. Their manager got fired in 78 because he was drunk in an airport and he was saying bad things about the owner and his star player. He wasn't saying that because he was sober, as I recall the story being. And also, and I didn't want to go here the other day, he did have some good relationships with players, but he had some terrible relationships with players, including, if you read the report from Reggie Jackson, he didn't necessarily, and we'll just keep it general, appreciate people who didn't necessarily view the world or have the same skin tonation as he did. None of that makes him a Hall of Famer.
I could tell you about Reggie Jackson.
No.
Ask Ken Holtzman what he thinks about Billy Martin.
No. Keith is up after Doc here when Doc is finished. Because I know Keith is disagreeing with some of the stuff Doc has said. I see him shaking his head a couple times. Keith, what do you got?
Well, first of all, I'm going to discount all of Billy's playing career. I could care less about him as a player. He was not a good Major League Baseball player. Just wasn't. Thank you. He had his moment. That was that. So I don't have any argument in that case. But his body of work as a manager, I disagree. I mean, every team he took over, he made better every team he may have had a problem when he left. They weren't better because he left, though. The Rangers were nowhere after he left. The Tigers were nowhere after he left for years. I mean, not forever, but for the years after. In 70, he brought the Yankees back. They were very mediocre. They had a run in 74, which is kind of an aberration because the Orioles were down, and the Orioles actually, if they could have beat the Orioles at all that year, they would have won the pennant. And we know Steinbrenner was lusting after Billy, even, as soon as he lost a Ranger job, we knew he was coming to New York. Everybody knew that. And he brought a luster back to the Yankees that had been gone for a decade and a half. Now, did he have his faults? Absolutely. One of his faults, and I disagree with the fact, and I think a lot of players of color will disagree with the fact that Billy Martin is a racist. He's not a racist. He disagreed with a lot of people like Reggie, like Ken Holtzman. He didn't like Ken Holtzman as a player, I believe. That's why he didn't pitch him. He didn't like Billy he didn't like Reggie because of his personality. And he wanted different guys. He wanted Joe Rudy. He wanted Bobby Grich. He didn't want Reggie Jackson. So, I mean, I don't, again, there are some guys like Willie Randolph who did not have a problem with Billy. Roy White, I don't believe, and Roy White as well as anybody right there on this panel, Doc. I don't believe Roy White had a problem with Billy Martin, did he?
Roy White, the only really thing that we said in the book was he felt Billy wasn't honest with him in the 1977 World Series.
That's fair enough. And I had that conversation with him when I interviewed him as well. But he didn't really speak badly of Billy other than that, pretty much that, he felt lied to. So that's fine. How about this? I want to ask Doc this question. Does Whitey Herzog belong in the Hall of Fame?
I don't believe Whitey Herzog's in the Hall of Fame.
He is in the Hall of Fame. Is Earl Weaver? Does Earl Weaver belong in the Hall of Fame?
You're going to say Earl Weaver won one World Series.
One World Series. He should have won 4, probably. He's favored in every World Series he was in. And Billy, and so they won the same number. Oh, first of all, they won the same number of World Series. He didn't win that many more games. He only won maybe, I don't know, a couple hundred more games than Billy.
Was Whitey Herzog fired a million times for fighting his players and fighting people in bars and all that? Was that part of his legacy?
No, it is not. And I will agree that there are bad parts to Billy Martin as well.
And Earl Weaver, was he a manager of the Baltimore Orioles for a long time?
Yes, he was.
Okay. And was Whitey Herzog manager of teams like the Cardinals and the Royals for a long time?
Yes, but I don't know that that's necessarily relevant to getting.
I do, because I think that's the reason Billy Martin's not a Hall of Famer, is he couldn't sustain any of his jobs. He got fired,
and again,
he was destructive to the team.
Then
whatever good he did, he ruined it, and that's why he's not a Hall of Famer.
But teams would continue to hire him. He went to the Twins were not a good team when he got there. They were a couple of years previous to that, but the year before he got there, they were very mediocre. He got them into the playoffs the first year. Got into a fight with his best player, his best pitcher. I get it. Stuff happened around Billy, but people were willing to look away from that and hire him. And he turned around, what is it, 4 franchises. And again, in 78, the team was a mess. Bob Lemon was a good influence on that team. I will say that as well, but Bob Lemon isn't necessarily the reason the Yankees won in 78. The Yankees won in 78 because the newspapers went on strike. And if the newspapers went on strike, Billy Martin brought that team back because nobody would have known what was going on.
Doc, let me just say this, guys. Billy Martin was one of the more popular Yankees of all time. If you judged it by crowd applause, if they all came out to take a bow, Billy would get one of the biggest hands. I mean,
This was another point I was going to bring up too. Billy's popularity in New York and in the game of baseball. In the 70s, baseball was not at its peak, anywhere near its peak. Baseball was declining and losing ground to the NFL, which it continued to lose over the years. But it did rebound. And not Billy because of Billy Martin, but the game needed guys like Billy Martin at that time as far as being a personality, I understand there are a lot of bad things that go along with Billy Martin. But as Jack pointed out, there's a lot of bad. You want to kick every bad person out of the Hall of Fame, it's going to be half empty. Just, not bad person, but people with some bad traits. Okay, the place will be half empty. And Billy deserves a better fate than what he got. I'll again compare him to Whitey Herzog. I'll compare him to Earl Williams, and I'll compare him to any of the guys that are up on the contemporary era committee this year. Davey Johnson, Lou Piniella, Jim Leland. I think I could be missing another one. I'm not sure, but those three guys are up. He compares very favorably with those guys. Lou Piniella managed everywhere. Jim Leland managed in a lot of places. Davey Johnson managed in more places than Billy. A very similar kind of track record in Davey Johnson. Now, I don't know whether you think they belong in the Hall of Fame, Doc, but I'll ask that question now. Does Davey Johnson belong in the Hall of Fame?
Well, in fact, this is Doc's time to rebut. Keith gave him a lot of information to rebut here. What do you think, Doc?
All right, so the Billy Martin racist comments come from the internet, ESPN, NBC Sports, CBS. Reggie made racial, anti-Semitic remarks. That's where that comes from.
We know that ESPN doesn't ever tell.
All right, so Larry Gura ends up being a great pitcher for the Kansas City Royals. Larry Gura had been a Yankee. Billy Martin didn't like Larry Gura. According to what I remember, the story was he saw Larry Gura going out to play tennis one game. Yep. And he felt that if you play tennis, you're not a real man. And so he said, I don't want this guy on my team. And so Larry Gura was then traded away, and Larry Gura becomes a Yankee killer for 5, 8, 10 years or so for the Kansas City Royals.
I don't know about
they beat Larry Gura in the deciding game when he came in out of the bullpen to go to the World Series in '77.
The point is, for every good thing you can say about him with the relationship, he was friends with Rod Carew. Ricky loved him. Willie Randolph loved him. That's terrific. Yeah. There are that many other players who to go against that. No one is saying that we're kicking out players from the Hall of Fame. We're making a decision at this point going forward. Does this guy's body of work rise to the level of being a Hall of Famer? My answer is no. And this is what we were saying right before the show started. He was great in a short burst of moment for these teams. And then those teams all under his watch, not the next guy, while he was the manager, got into chaotic situations. He was self-destructive, and they had to fire him, and the team was in bad shape at that moment while he was the manager.
Was he the manager in 1979?
He was the manager, yeah, when Thurman died, yes.
He because they were underperforming, and Bob Lemon got fired.
Right, Bob Lemon got fired.
And did he turn him around? Did they win the pennant in 79?
No, they were too far gone by then, and Gossage was on the
and did they bring him back in 1980? If he was so great?
They fired Hauser was the manager after won 103 games in 1980. George Steinbrenner would fire guys.
Nothing to do with Billy Martin. He wasn't the manager in 1980. If he was so great, if he was such a great influence on that team, why wasn't he the manager that next year?
He was the manager a few times after George would rehire him because he realized what Martin could do for the Yankees.
Why did he win any more pennants? This is silly. He realized what Martin could do. And how many World Series did Martin win in the 1980s with the Yankees?
He won the same number as Earl Weaver won with the Orioles, actually.
So we're going back to
Weaver had better players. Billy Martin didn't have a Frank Robinson and a Brooks Robinson.
We've got to press on it. So let me say what I think here. First of all, I think Billy Martin is a borderline Hall of Fame manager. I mean, I would not be upset if he got in. I am not upset that he's not in. I think with teams, he could turn teams around very quickly and become a lot better. And after he left, I don't think that should count against him, Doc. I think that's on another manager's watch. He either keeps it going or he doesn't. But as a player, I don't think you guys are giving him enough credit. In World Series history, in his World Series, he batted .333 in all his World Series play. He was a good hitter. I don't know if he won an MVP or not during one of those World Series, but he was a
He
.333.
did 53. He was a World Series MVP.
There you go. So he was a better hitter or a better player maybe than Doc's giving him credit, than anyone's giving him credit for. So
Nice.
I'm just saying that the guy was a heck of a hitter when they needed him to hit. And that catch, I'm not going to put him in the Hall of Fame as a catcher for that one catch either. So I think as a body of work, if that was one of the things that you could put people in the Hall of Fame for, maybe he gets in, Jack. Maybe you're right. But that's not how it is. It's manager, it's player, it's broadcaster. There's separate Hall of Fame things for different things. So you can't give him a body of work award, or a lot of people would get in for that. A lot of people would get kicked out because of that, because they weren't as good broadcasters as they were players, or vice versa. So anyway, I think he's borderline manager. He did take Yankees to a pennant. With a very not talented team, a bunch of guys that, if you compare them to a lot of teams at that time, were not that talented. And he did take them to the pennant, losing to, of course, the Red Machine. The following year, he gets them there. They win, and that was the first time they won a World Series in since the 60s, early 60s. So I do give him credit for that. But again, even after all this, I have to go with Doc. He is a borderline manager as far as getting into the Hall of Fame. I don't know if he's in Monument Park or not. I think he is. If I'm not mistaken. So they did recognize him as their little Hall of Fame in New York, which he should be. There's no doubt about that. So yes, Jack.
I'll just make one non-Billy Martin comment. This isn't Billy Martin, but it's baseball. We talk about body of work. Bill White is on the ballot this year. Now, if you combine what Bill White did as a player and as a broadcaster, I talk about body of work. He absolutely should be in the Hall of Fame. He's a Hall of Famer, but he might get in. He might not get in. They're judging him strictly mainly as a broadcaster.
He was the president of the National League.
Right. Doc, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this Veterans Committee, the Contemporary Committee, we change the name every 2 years as committee. I do think they take the entire body of work in this case. I'm not sure. You may know better than I, but I think
I think it's on I don't think they're saying just as a manager, just as a broadcaster. I think they're looking at the body of work.
I think so in that case too. Yes.
And
I'll add one thing. One name that came up here that also belongs in the Hall of Fame, by the way, is Greg Nettles. So I'll throw that out there.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt about that, especially as a third baseman. So, guys, there's a quarterback that was Doc, you take over because I'm ready to roll here. Go ahead, Doc.
By the way, the MVP of the 1960 World Series was Bobby Richardson. Nobody's saying Bobby Richardson belongs in the Hall.
Is he in Monument Park?
He is not.
That's
wow.
And Bobby Richardson was a better second baseman than Billy Martin, but let's just leave it alone. Here we go. All right, so it's now time for me to just sit back and listen to you guys talk. And that was fun, by the way, guys. It's always good to have a good debate and a good argument. And that's what we do as sports fans. It's fun.
If somebody told me to come on and argue the other side of this argument, I probably would have been able to do that as well. So he is a borderline. And
let me just ask Doc one last thing on Billy Martin. I'm just asking, if he didn't see Larry Gura come out in those white tennis shorts, would Gura have been in his starting rotation?
Probably. I mean, who knows, right? Oy vey. All right. Anyway, we're doing the quarterback question. Does Vikings quarterback Josh Dobbs need to be benched?
He's not their starter. He came in a couple of weeks in an emergency. 3 weeks he started. And people, no offense, Mac, but people like Mac go crazy when he has a couple of good games. I mean, Mac lives in the moment. Bless Mac for that. He lives in the moment. The quarterback is going to have a big game tomorrow off the bench. Mac's going to say, start him. He's your guy from now on. Dobbs came back down to earth last Monday against the Chicago Bears. He played poorly all in all, turned the ball over a few times. And he's a backup. He's competent. You want him on your roster. because he could come in and on a given day, he could perform well on a given day. There are guys like that around the league, and they're valuable to a team. But Josh Dobbs, Kirk Cousins is out for the year. I'm not sure about their other backups, how ready they are. But the Vikings owe Josh Dobbs nothing in regard to the starting job. He has no resume with them. He came in an emergency and gave him a spark, and good for him. And we saw the reason why he's kicked around team to team in the last game.
Yeah, I hate that I find myself agreeing with Jack so much lately. It's really disturbing.
Rick even agrees with me. He's a Viking fan. Wow.
Exactly. You know what? He came in, as Jack said, he, like a lot of guys through the history of the NFL, have come in and had a couple of good games. I remember Clint Longley having a great game on Thanksgiving for the Cowboys as a career amounted to nothing. I know the Steelers benched a future Hall of Famer and Terry Bradshaw and played Joe Gilliam because he had a great couple of games, and then he faded away to nothing. Bailey Zappi played a great half against Green Bay, and Max wanted him to be the starter ever since in New England.
Yeah, but
again,
look at the choices.
Well, again, if the choices are not better than Josh Dobbs, then he can play. But, right now he's playing really bad football and his team's in a playoff hunt. And if there's a better option, as Jack said, they owe him nothing. He came in here a month ago. And if he was so good, why is he not in Pittsburgh where he got drafted? Why is he not in Arizona where they don't have anybody besides Kyler Murray? So again,
it was with Tennessee last year. He's kicked around for a reason.
He plays 2 games, and people are talking about he's the future of the Minnesota Vikings. Let's move on from Kirk Cousins. Well, I'm not in love with Kirk Cousins, but all of a sudden it's like we can let Kirk Cousins walk, and Josh Dobbs will be the guy, and we'll draft another quarterback to play in 3 years. And
Keith, Mack is doing this now with Tommy DeVito. Oh, maybe he should be the giant quarterback of the future.
Not me. Far from that. You see,
I have to say, let me jump in here. I don't listen to a lot of sports talk radio, but I was driving to my college class, scanning the channels, and on one of the sports stations in New York, they were doing a countdown of the superstar players from this area, the New York, New Jersey area, who starred for New York teams based upon the fact that Tommy DeVito is doing so well. They're starting to call him great. That was on a radio show. I heard.
They're delusional. Giant fans are delusional.
It's crazy. Yeah, he's played a couple of games. Anyway, Mac, your turn.
Yeah. They piled on me, Doc, this time. Listen, Josh Dobbs is probably the only quarterback in the history of football that I have ever seen that played better when he didn't know what the offensive game plan was, right? He didn't know the name of the players. He didn't know what the game plan was, and he just shined. So I think what happened is that they gave him too much information, the smart guy. They should have not revealed the game plan to him. Just go out there and wing it. And maybe the Minnesota Vikings would have won the last 2 games. It's crazy. I've never seen that in the history that I've been watching football.
Are you advocating for that, actually, or you're not actually advocating that we don't tell the quarterback the game plan? Right?
In Josh Dobbs' case, I think that's the secret weapon. So
I don't think you'd flung in the NFL yourself if that was your game plan. I'm just saying.
So I don't know. I don't know, Keith. They sure are playing worse now that he knows the names of the players.
I agree, but
so listen.
With
the Cardinals, he had 5. I think it's 5 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. It was 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He gets 5 TDs and 5 interceptions with the Minnesota Vikings. But the 4 of them, they were in 1 game, guys. How many quarterbacks have a bad game that throw 3 or 4 interceptions?
Well, you're asking the wrong guy right now.
So wait, Jack. Let me ask you. Let me make this point. So he has 1 bad game, and all of a sudden he's not a good quarterback anymore. Jalen Hurts has had bad games. Josh Allen recently has had bad games. In fact,
most of his games were bad. He had a couple of good games.
I am talking about 1 bad game, and you're all like, kick him to the curb. Yet he comes in here and puts Minnesota almost on his back. running, throwing, making plays that resemble almost Patrick Mahomes like, and brings him back, puts him in contention again for the wild card race, and he has one bad game, everybody says kick him out. On one game,
no one said kick him out. You could keep him around as a backup.
But Jack, he's the only one there. Kirk Cousins is gone. How are you going to keep? He's not. He's the first string quarterback right now at this time in Minnesota Vikings. So without those four
fill-in right now, he's a fill-in.
They got what?
He's a fill-in.
I understand that. I understand that, but he's going to be filling in for the rest of the season, Jack.
He might not be Who's starting tomorrow? The Viking coach said he might not be starting. Dobbs.
He might not be, but just like Mac Jones, he might not be, but he always is. The point I'm making, guys, is without those 4 interceptions, Josh Dobbs has 5 touchdowns in 1 interception. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
You want to? Why don't you start talking to us about his huge body of work with all the other teams? And if you want to start going over all that, there's a reason.
I don't care. That's like talking about Billy Martin's body of work with the other teams. You don't care about that. I don't care about
Billy Martin's body of work with the other teams.
I don't care about his body of work when it comes to Josh Dobbs. Like you don't care about Billy Martin's work destroying other teams while he's there.
No one intended Josh Dobbs to start for the Vikings.
Here's, you know what? If we're talking about Josh Dobbs playing now, as I said, if the coach determines that Josh Dobbs is the best option to win now, then okay. But I've heard a lot of talk about, we're playing our future around Josh Dobbs, which is ridiculous thinking.
Well, Rick says, Keith and I agreed yesterday, we like Jack Kirsch, just don't agree with his takes. So,
well, what said Rick feels Dobbs should be their franchise quarterback? Is that what Rick is saying?
I don't think Rick is. That's just a comment, because you came up on one of my shows yesterday, Jack, and I said I like Jack a lot, which I didn't know if Rick actually knew. But I like Jack. We just disagree.
I like you guys as well. I like Rick too. I don't always agree with Rick's views, but I understand being a Viking fan can be a hard thing to endure. I can relate being a Jet fan.
I think we all like Jack. I think that's something we can all agree on.
Is this This is because there's a retirement party or something for Jack. What happened here?
Yeah. Kenneth Gifford agrees with all of us, right? He isn't a starter, but makes a good backup. We all agree with that. The problem is, Ken, he's a starter right now. And to me anyway, I know Doc isn't involved in this. To me, and what Jack and Keith are saying, he had 1 bad game, so they should start somewhere.
How many good games did he have? He came off the street. He won it. He had a couple of decent games, but it was the team. But things come back down to earth after a while. Any quarterback can come in and look good for a couple of games, and then reality sets in over time. And look at what happened with Dobbs against the Chicago bad defense.
And to counter that, any quarterback can come in and have a bad game too, Jack. Any quarterback.
But Dobbs has had a number of bad games. That's why he's gone team to team. You're not looking at we're looking at his career. You're looking at his work since he's been with the Vikings. If Dobbs was a high draft choice, and these was only 3 games with the Vikings, fine, I would say, okay, had a bad game, we move on from it. We know what his potential is.
He's not beating the Eagles and the Chiefs and the Cowboys either.
No. Oh, boy, that Eagles defense would destroy Dobbs. Destroy him.
Listen, he may very well be the starter. This team, I don't think, will make the playoffs if he remains the starter.
Well, I don't think they'll make the playoffs with any of the backups either, Keith.
No, that's probably true. That's probably true.
They'll see what their best are. If Kirk Cousins was healthy, put it this way, he's miles ahead of Joshua Dobbs. It's not even close. And I don't consider Cousins an elite quarterback. I consider him a good quarterback, but not elite. Okay? But he's miles ahead of Dobbs. If he was healthy, there'd be no quarterback competition.
Well, of course not. If Rodgers was healthy, what I mean? Anyway.
Well, I think the Jets are a great example. Again, a passive Jets fan on and off for the last 40 years or whatever. But boy, oh boy, how many times have you heard Mike White is the answer, or Tim Boyle, or Pat Ryan, or Geno Smith? All these guys. Now Smith became good in with the Seahawks, but the point is like, oh, the backup is so much better. The backup is so much better, and then the backup gets exposed after a couple games. And to me, that's what Dobbs seems to be. So anyway, we'll move on. Let's keep talking about quarterbacks. The question here is Josh Allen over criticized? Is everybody too hard on Josh Allen? What do you think?
Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I think people run hot and cold with all these quarterbacks. Right now, people are questioning Justin Herbert, for example, okay? And I think if they questioned Lamar Jackson not long ago, but Lamar Jackson started playing well, so no one is questioning him anymore. And Justin Herbert, he'll break out of this funk. It's team-related, but people are questioning him. And they do it with Josh Allen. But he has a couple of good games, and they're kind of laying off Josh Allen right now. Because he did play well against the Eagles. He played well, the week before against the Jets.
They're saying Josh Allen lost the game against the Eagles, Jack.
No, he didn't lose the game against the Eagles. I mean, Buffalo doesn't have really a strong running game. The offensive line is suspect.
I don't understand that. James Cook has run for over 700 yards. He's averaging almost 5 yards a carry. He doesn't have touchdowns because Josh Allen is the one who scores all the touchdowns down around the goal line. So their running game is a lot better than people get it credit for, and the team does not commit to the run because they put too much on Josh Allen, and that's part of his problem. He's a very good NFL quarterback. The team puts too much on him, or he takes it on himself. I don't know which that is, and if it's him, then the coaches need to do that. And he misses Brian Daboll. He got better every single year of his career under Brian Daboll. Every single year he got better, and he's regressed a little the last 2 years, but he's still in the top. He's in the top 10 quarterbacks in the league. It's not like he's
exactly. Keith said it best. He's the franchise quarterback for the Bills. We could look at every team's roster and say, is their starting quarterback now going to be their start in 5 years? And most teams, the answer would be no. But with Josh Allen, it would be a slam dunk. Yes, he's going to be their quarterback in 5 years. Let me put it another way. If Buffalo all of a sudden had the number one choice in the draft, and they had the option of trading Josh Allen and taking the best college quarterback, would they do that? I think absolutely not.
They'd be crazy if they did that.
Well, let me put this to you, right? Right now, Jalen Hurts is in the upper echelon. He's one of the favorites to win the MVP, right? I mean, he's in that class. Josh Allen, believe it or not, has very similar numbers, right? So Allen has 24 touchdowns and 18 interceptions. So he leads the league in touchdowns and leads the league in interceptions. Hurts has 18 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. So they're very similar. But yet
the Bills record?
The Bills record is 6-6.
What's the Eagles record?
They're like 10-1 or 11-1.
Yeah,
but still that's a team.
Much better talent, except for Stephon.
That's a team. That's a team record. It's not the quarterback record. But I get what you're saying, Doc. They get the credit or they get the blame.
Always. Yep.
The point I'm making here is the reason why the Bills have that record is not because of Josh Allen. I said they're blaming Josh Allen. It's not his fault. It's the defense. It's always been the defense with the Buffalo Bills since the 4 Super Bowls when they got blown out. Since they lost the championship to the 49ers with, 19 seconds left or something like that. They couldn't stop them from going down the field. And they're running into that problem again this year. They could put up 40 points if they want. The defense will give up 41. So the problem with the Buffalo Bills team is not Josh Allen, is not the offense. They've got a pretty explosive offense, as Keith has said. Even their running game is pretty explosive. Throw Josh Allen with Cooks and the other guy. I mean, that's an explosive running game. So it's the defense. It's always been the defense, and the head coach is the defensive coach.
There's no place else to hide. The defensive coordinator left before the season, Leslie Frazier. He fired his offensive coordinator. There's nobody else left. There's one guy.
Right.
There's no more cover for McDermott.
Let me ask you a question. Talking about coaching and the Bills, it's not going to happen because the Giants turned their season around the last couple of weeks, and they've held it together, and they've won some games when they really should have, by all measures, lost all these games with everybody hurt and the third string quarterback in. But there was a talk a couple of weeks ago that Bill Belichick might go to the Giants if it was a disaster of a season. If that had happened, would the Bills have welcomed back Brian Daboll? Would that be the move they should make to be their head coach?
That's a giant leap in hypotheticals, by the way, because Daboll's not getting fired. But
correct. I'm saying a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I think that'd be an interesting dynamic. It's possible. It's possible.
Keith, let me ask you this question. Can I just ask Keith this quickly about the Patriots, Robert Kraft? How much does it mean to him to see Bill Belichick break the coaching record? Won't he hate to see Belichick break it elsewhere? I think it would mean a lot to Kraft that he does it in New England. So might he stretch this Belichick situation out and not fire him until he could at least break the record for in New England?
I think he would. I think he would love to see Bill Belichick break the record in New England, but he also wants this team return to some of its luster of previous years and be a Super Bowl contender again. And if he doesn't think Bill Belichick is the guy to do that, and their conversation, maybe it's already been had, I don't know, about Bill giving up some other powers and being a head coach, then it's not going to happen. And if Bill wants to coach somewhere else, it's going to be a trade, by the way. He's not just going to be able to walk away and go where he wants.
I agree. And Kenneth Gifford brings up a great thing that I've always talked about. Too many things can go wrong in a pass play. And if you're going to throw the ball, it can be incomplete. It can be an interception, or it can be a completion. So, I mean, there's 2 out of 3 things that can happen that are bad on pass.
Woody Hayes always said only one good thing can happen on a pass. So.
That's right. That's very true. So, anyway, I think too much that they're criticizing Allen when his record is even better as a quarterback now by position than Jalen Hurts, who's considered an MVP. So, defensive problems over there, Doc.
Okay. Let's keep talking about coaches. Should Panthers head coach Frank Wright have been fired?
Guys, his record was 1-10. Do I have to say anything more?
You don't. You know, it's probably not fair to Frank Reich because the team wasn't very good that he took over. There's not a lot of talent there. Bryce Young is a rookie quarterback and not having as bad a year as people think. I think the C.J. Stroud comparison hurts. His injuries and the comparison to Stroud's season hurts that. His numbers aren't awful. But coaches, there is no patience for coaches today. You get 2 years. That's a pretty short tenure, 10 games or whatever it was. But, you know, there's a lot of second-year guys that are going to get fired this year because you win now or you get fired. There's no 5-year plans today. So is it fair? Probably not, but it's the reality of the NFL today.
Well, but Paul Hackett got fired last year as the Denver Bronco coach in his first year. Same situation. And people weren't saying it was unfair to Hackett. They were awful.
No, because
Ken brings up a heck of a point again, the front office. You
have
a Carolina
great points on my show, by the way.
Yeah, Carolina Panthers have an owner that's not a football guy. Jim Jeffcoat and Byron have talked about this a lot. He's one of them venture capitalists. He's used to, talking to board members and rolling a profit. He doesn't belong as an owner in the NFL. He's the one that wanted Bryce Young, not the head coach. Head coach wanted C.J. Stroud, and then he fired him because he picked Bryce Young as his quarterback. So I mean, this is the biggest problem with a lot of sports teams coming up when you have venture capitalists buying football teams that have no idea about the game.
By the way, let's not write off Bryce Young yet. I mean, my God, he's played 10 games in his career.
He's a bust. He's a bust.
Look at the numbers. He's not having an awful year. He's on an awful team. C.J. Stroud's on a better team, and he's better coached, and that's why he's having a better season. Give him a chance. He's a rookie quarterback.
Heath, I'm not saying that he's a bad quarterback, even though he gets injured a lot. is too small in frame to be a quarterback. But what I'm trying to say, he's in a bad position, and his career is going to get ruined if he stays there. I think he's going to be a bust. I think the kid's ruined. I think this kid's already ruined. I don't know where he can go right now, Keith, where he would be okay. That's as a backup.
I'll take a shot at him right now.
So hypothetically, Mac, if Carolina called the Giants at the end of the year during the draft and said, give us your second round draft choice, not first, second round for Bryce Young, even up, you wouldn't make the deal.
No, you're paying your quarterback $40 million. How can you do that?
There's too many talented quarterbacks out there right now, Jack, that are better than Bryce Young. Sorry.
Can I make one quick comment too about the comments from the gallery today? All these guys are fellow Perth high school alumni. I just want to point that out.
And he doesn't know how to spell your name either.
Very smart.
If he's such a friend, and he's very smart, spells Keith Kieth.
I'll tell you this, Keith.
Math and that stuff was not our forte at Perth High School. I mean, other stuff.
If Billy Martin was the principal at your high school, he would have straightened all your friends out.
Max over there like, what kind of high school these guys come from?
So
Billy would have instituted a dress
get to that. Let's get to that last.
Hey, you got that last college question here.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the question.
Right.
Is it time for the government to step in over the college head coach multi-million-dollar payouts? Is it the government's business to jump in because these college head coaches are getting paid lots of money?
Let me go first because Keith is laughing at that question already. Listen, colleges are supported by the state taxes, correct? I mean, they do pay money to the state to help subsidize the colleges. The federal government is giving out student loans because the tuition is so high, and in part because they're paying out millions of dollars to these coaches not to coach there. I don't want to hear about the backers because the backers who bring in these coaches are idiots. They know nothing about football either. I'm just saying right now, a kid cannot go to college because of tuitions, has to get loans, which are federally funded, and comes back to us as taxpayers, where we have to either forgive these guys or whatever they're going to do with these college kids that can't afford. A regular kid can't go to college right now. So I know it sounds crazy, but to me, the government's got to do something, guys. You can't just start paying all these high salaries to these coaches and then giving them money after they leave. I think that's ridiculous.
It's not just crazy, it's wrong. I mean, one thing has nothing to do with the other. These football programs are generating hundreds of millions of dollars for the university. It says the high tuitions have nothing to do with what coaches get paid. And I'm not saying what's going on is nuts, by the way, the way they're getting paid. But I have always said, if somebody's willing to pay it, then you're worth it. Sorry, if these universities want to, and it's the alumni that are paying off the Jimbo Fishers to go away. It's nobody else. It's not coming out of the coffers of the university. It just isn't. If it was, he'd still be there. And the other thing is, I don't want the federal government involved in anything more than they are. They can't run the things they're supposed to run. You want them to get involved in the NCAA? Come on. It's already screwed up enough. We don't need the federal government involved.
So Keith, what's the answer then? So what's the? I mean, you're acting like what I'm saying is crazy. I don't think it's crazy.
Because I'm saying that schools have nothing to do with what coaches are making.
These are public institutions, Keith. They're institutions.
No, they're private institutions that get some public funding. They're private. If we're not talking about state schools, are we?
Well, any school. It could be any school. Some could be.
I'm talking about them too.
Texas A&M doesn't happen to be a state school for that example, right? But again, they're not connected. The tuitions for the kids are paying are not connected to the football programs. It's the other way around, by the way. The football programs are supporting and subsidizing a lot of the things that happen around the universities, with buildings getting built and supporting other sports in the programs. It's not affecting tuition of these schools. This is totally separate. You're talking about programs, again, that are bringing hundreds of millions of dollars into the university.
Keith, it happened in Mac's state of Connecticut. I forgot some years back, a public official, I forgot which one, questioned Jim Calhoun, the coach of the men's basketball team at Connecticut,
I remember
about him making so much money that he should maybe take a cut in pay. And Calhoun said, I'm not going to give back 1 penny. And he got very angry. So there was some controversy going on in Connecticut over that.
I think he was making similar. The guy was making similar charges to Mac, that the students were paying X and blah blah blah, and he told the guy to get his facts straight because
their argument was he was making more than the dean, which most coaches do now. I mean, most coaches
they make more than they're the highest paid state employee in every state. The head coach of this university is the highest paid person in the entire state.
I agree with that. I still listen, Keith. I still think there has to be some kind of monitoring or something where somebody like Jumbo Fisher comes in, they offer him, $75 million which is totally ridiculous, to coach a football team, and then he can leave and they continue to pay him after he leaves.
It's not ridiculous. It's not ridiculous. Somebody's willing to pay it, and so the people who need to take control are the presidents of the universities. Need to rein this in and stop giving out 10-year guaranteed contracts for $90 million. They can do that. If you don't perform, I'll pay you $9 million as long as you perform, but I'm going to fire you as soon as you don't perform.
If a team wins and the coach is very popular with the fan base, they have more power than the university president. There was a story of Bobby Knight cursing out the university president. Was it at Texas Tech? I'm not sure. But
Indiana.
Yeah, and the point is, nothing could be done with Bobby. Now, this was after he left Indiana.
Well, then he probably, once he got rehired, he probably felt he was bulletproof. He thought he was bulletproof in Indiana. It turned out he wasn't. So, not everybody. Everybody gets fired eventually. It doesn't matter how much you make. I never thought Jimbo Fisher would get paid $77 million to walk away. That's $50 million more than anybody else ever got paid in a buyout. Gus Malzone at Auburn got 26. I mean, I'm not disagreeing that that's a boatload of money to pay somebody to go away and don't coach, but that's not universities. I don't need. These are people who are running universities. They should be brighter than that give this money away for free. They put performance clauses in there. There's no reason they can't. The coaches say no. You keep doing it, the coaches will have to say yes. That's all. I don't get paid if I don't do my job, and I'm okay with that. I'm always been okay with that.
Well, Keith, there is oversight in most things that happen in sports, whether it's the NCAA or it's the NFL or it's basketball. There is oversight committees in here. In fact, isn't there an oversight committee? They just had a Senate committee with I forget what it was about, but they had a Senate committee looking at an NCAA for something.
I know. They were looking at in the transfer portal. Tommy Tuberville was looking into that. Former coach in college football. He's a senator from Alabama.
So I mean, it does happen, and I don't know why.
I've even changed my tune on the whole NIL and portal thing. I was deadly against it. Well, now the coaches don't. There's no loyalty from coaches. There's no loyalty from universities. They just jump and leave conferences, leave their fans behind, leave teams like Oregon State and Washington State who've been affiliated with the Pac-12 for 100 years. Just leave them behind. So there's no loyalty anywhere. So I don't even have a problem with the players jumping around anymore. I've changed my attitude.
Keith, Deion Sanders at Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year, and there's talk he's going to leave Colorado after 1 or 2 seasons.
If somebody's willing to pay him more, he'll probably go.
Yeah.
And if it's a higher profile program,
So follow the money, no doubt. But you know what, gentlemen?
Yes.
There's been such great talk, such great debate. Keith, you ought to come every week. This was great.
Oh, well.
You know what we could do? We could raise your salary.
I didn't know.
And if you come every week, Mac might give me a $77 million buyout not to be on the show. I'm not sure. We'll have to negotiate that. But
Keith would have to be incentive driven. There's no guarantees money for Keith.
That's right. I very rarely perform at this high level. That's for sure.
Listen,
Anyway,
you raised the bar. The standard was raised tenfold this morning. So
Yes,
great.
it was.
Thank you
Yes,
for
it
that.
was. Guys, tomorrow the big football show, 8 to 10 a.m. Me, Keith, Jim Jeffcoat. We've added a new co-host, Sonia Pearson, who's very, very knowledgeable in football, great personality. And of course, we'll have Keith, Robert Butler, Pags. We have a special guest coming in, the NFL genius, he calls himself, Gene, who is a big Philadelphia. Gene, the NFL genius. So we'll have him on. So this should be an action-packed show tomorrow. Doc, great job. Jack, always.
Doc's the smartest guy I've ever dealt with on his show. Now he's not, because this guy's a genius.
Really? Yeah, he's going to have I'm going to give him a new contract when he says you're the smartest guy.
Mac, you blew it. We should have taken advantage with Yankee talk with Doc and Keith together. The two Yankee haters against you and I, the two Yankee lovers.
Yankee haters.
We should debate the two against
their cards have definitely been pulled, Jack. Their Yankee cards have definitely been pulled.
Yeah.
We'll see you tomorrow Sunday. Have a great Saturday night, guys.